What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Same thing for the Lakers Wolves. These are just my initial thoughts. Reserve the right to change my mind. But I can tell you as a fan, I was experiencing a great deal of anxiety worrying about how to guard the Golden State Warriors. They were a team that caused me anxiety on both ends of the floor because, one, I don't think they have the foot speed to guard Steph. And then once you start throwing a lot of attention at Steph, playmaking talent is how you capitalize on that. I'm more worried about super smart, high IQ teams incrementally breaking down the Laker defense than teams that can't play make. The Warriors have all that playmaking talent. They were a team that I thought was going to be able to score against the Laker defense. And then on the other end of the floor, it's a team that switches a ton, super high IQ, and excellent in rotation at like speeding guys up, which I thought could cause some problems for Laker role players and capitalize on some of the indecision for Luka and LeBron. I would have still picked the Lakers versus the Warriors. I think they're a better basketball team, but I thought it was a really tough matchup. And it was something that I was worried about and I didn't want to see. And I would rather see after they dealt with Dillon Brooks, kicking them in the balls for 2 straight weeks. So that was that was the ideal outcome for me. Timberwolves, as a fan, again, and I might change my mind after digging into the numbers a little bit, and digging into the film, but I think it's the perfect matchup for the Lakers as a first-round series. The only team that I'd feel more confident in them beating out of the teams that were beneath them in the standings that they could potentially face in the first round, the only team I'd feel more confident in them beating is Memphis, and Memphis had no chance to get out of the 8 because they've just been playing really bad basketball for a while. This was the team I wanted. Here's my basic reasoning, surface level right now, before I dig into the film and do the comprehensive breakdown. 1, the Dorian Finney-Smith, Rui Hachimura lineup, the lineup with Austin, LeBron, and Luka, the lineup that I've often said is the only other team other than Boston, with their lineups with Horford or Porzingis, the only other lineup in the league that can truly present elite advantage creation with elite 5-out spacing. That's the only lineups in the league that can do that right now. 5 guys where it's like, you can't leave this guy open. If you leave him open, he's just going to hit shots. If you leave Dorian Finney-Smith open, he's going to hit shots. If you leave Rui open, he's going to hit shots. If you leave Austin open, he's going to hit shots. If you leave LeBron open, he's going to hit shots. And Luka's probably going to have the ball most of the time. So it's a lineup that can really, truly space the floor. That lineup will either play Rudy off the floor or at least neutralize his rim protection. Rudy, when he can sit under the basket, is a devastating defensive player. When he switches onto the perimeter and has help behind him, he's a devastating defensive player. When he has to guard in space, his defensive value is mitigated a bit because he's not protecting the rim. He's defending out on the perimeter, which he does well, but not exactly as well as elite perimeter defenders. And then is he bringing enough offensively on the other end of the floor to justify him being out on the court? That is the question. We will see. It's very possible that we see Chris Finch basically just be like, we're going to leave Rudy out there, and even if we lose some value in certain places, we're going to gain value elsewhere. We'll see. But that unit, at the very least, should be able to neutralize Rudy's rim protection. Once you neutralize Rudy's rim protection, now you're allowing LeBron and Luka to pick on matchups without having to worry about being deterred when they get to the rim. I think that is a huge advantage for the Lakers. 2, the Wolves' perimeter guys, all their perimeter defenders, are way too small for Luka. As we saw in the Western Conference Finals last year, Jaden McDaniels is just too skinny for Luka. He can throw him around. He's one of the very best perimeter defenders in the league who can't guard Luka. And that is like just a really difficult situation to manage right off the top. I want to, there's a potential here to tinker with matchups. So you could imagine a situation where you take Jaden McDaniels and you put him on Austin Reeves instead, because he at the very least can stop Austin Reeves. But then it's like, now you're asking Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle to guard LeBron James and Luka Doncic. And that's a problem because, one, Ant can't navigate screens. So if you put him on Luka, he's just going to run him through screens. We saw that at the tail end of the Western Conference Finals last year. They tried Ant on Luka. It didn't work. Put Julius on Luka. That's going to be barbecue chicken. And you could put LeBron on, you could put Anthony Edwards on LeBron, but now you're leaving Julius on Luka, and that's just a huge problem. If you don't put Jaden on Austin, who's guarding Austin? Is it going to be Mike Conley? Like, Austin's going to cook Mike Conley. Like, there's so many different like matchup issues with the way that Minnesota can disperse their perimeter talent. If I was coaching the Timberwolves, what I would do is I would lean a lot more into like Dante DiVincenzo, and I would deploy their best defenders on LeBron and Austin and try to mitigate them as much as possible, understanding that you're probably not going to do much damage to Luka anyway. So maybe like put Jaden on LeBron and put Dante on Austin and essentially have those two be uncomfortable all series and just see if Luka can do enough damage to you and try to wear him down with physicality over the course of the series. But the bottom line is the Wolves perimeter guys are just not necessarily big and strong enough to bother a Luka, Doncic, and LeBron. The way that like you see from Houston, for instance, or when Golden State like deploys Draymond and Jimmy on the perimeter and stuff like that. Like those options are just not available to Minnesota in this series. And then lastly, as an advantage for the Lakers, I think, as I mentioned earlier, what worries me the most for the Laker defense is playmaking talent. The reason why is there's a lot of smoke and mirrors with JJ Redick's defense. They don't have rim protection. They don't have a ton of elite perimeter defenders that usually are hiding at least 2 targets on the floor at any given time. But what they do is they just have a ton of like elite defensive game planning in terms of like funneling guys into where they specifically want their help side set up. They're good in rotation. They've got a couple of athletes on the floor all the time that are flying around and help in recover situations. You need to break down the Laker defense with incremental playmaking, like creating that initial advantage, and then the guy drives a closeout, and then another guy makes a great read, and a guy makes a smart cut. If you do that kind of stuff, you can pick the Lakers apart, and the Warriors have done that in their most recent matchup against the Lakers. This Timberwolves team is not a good aggregate playmaking team. They're a team that I think would be susceptible to a lot of the gimmicky stuff that JJ Redick will do. I expect an assortment of double teams against Anthony Edwards. I expect a lot of pressure being put on Ant to be an elite playmaker in this series. I just think from a matchup standpoint, a lot of stuff just kind of lines up with the Lakers' strengths and avoids some of the Lakers' weaknesses. And so I think it's just a really favorable matchup for them. Now, again, where another opportunity for the Timberwolves in this series, where the Lakers struggled in the past with Ant and Julius, Anthony Edwards in particular in their last matchup, even though the Lakers controlled that matchup from start to finish, they were funneling Anthony Edwards. They were doing the same defense they used against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So they're funneling him towards the sideline, like opening up their stance, basically. They did this against Jalen Brunson, too. If you remember, they used it against Shai. They used it against Jalen. They used it. It's basically their defense against elite star guards in this league. They funnel him towards the sideline with like basically a catch waiting. So a helper like that's already zoned up on the strong side outside the block, like waiting for that drive. And Ant did have some success in that game being like, oh, you're going to give me a runway? Well, I'm way more athletic than you guys. And he would just shoot that gap and he'd be right in the teeth of all the help. But he's such an elite athlete that he would either just finish over everybody or he would do that slow down step he does and wait for everybody to land back on the ground before he goes back up and score. Ant did have some success against that defensive game plan before he got ejected in that game. And then lastly, Julius Randle over the years has had some success against Rui Hachimura. It's something I've talked about on the show before, the idea of like holding ground with your shoulder. Rui has a little bit of a tendency to give ground against physicality. And so if Rui Hachimura gets the Julius Randle matchup instead of LeBron James to start the game, that's something I could see Rui having some issues with. It's very possible that the Lakers deploy LeBron on Jaden McDaniels, thinking they can use him as a roamer. And I think they could end up in some situations where Julius gets comfortable if they do that. So I don't want to sit here and pretend like Minnesota doesn't have advantages. They obviously do. I just think the Lakers have more advantages in this matchup. This was the matchup that I was most comfortable with as a first-round series for the Lakers other than Memphis. Again, we're going to do a deep dive as we get later into this week, but those are my initial impressions. That's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. I will see you guys tomorrow morning with series previews on the Bucks and the Pacers and the Pistons and the Knicks. And then again tomorrow night for the Warriors playing game. As always, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you then.